Welcome back to this UroChat episode. I am Mark Lewis, in for the normal host, Steve Cooper, because when we want to learn more about Steve, it's a little awkward for him to interview himself. So I've known Steve for quite a while. I'm a part of the network here at Star Worldwide Network. So Steve, it's a pleasure to continue our look into your life, as it were.
Thank you, Mark.
Let's take folks back, because those who are not familiar with your story, as I am, and those who know you, I think are going to find it fascinating. So when I first met you and you were having some physical issues and you were going to the VA at the time, take people back to where you were when you heard about the diagnosis.
Sure. So I left active duty in 2007. I came out here to Phoenix in June, and I immediately went to the VA trying to seek care, trying to establish myself as a patient. And it took about a year to get my first initial appointment. So that was 2008, rolled around. 2009, I started not feeling too well. 2010, I was getting really sick. And so I noticed that it was slow to get appointments at the Phoenix VA. It would take a year. When the appointment was ready to come up, they would cancel our appointment. They would send us a postcard that your appointment's canceled, your new appointment's 6 months in the future. You get ready for that next appointment. They would send you another postcard that was canceled. So a lot of us were waiting 2, 3, 4 years to finally get a doctor appointment. And I was basically trying to enroll in the system because I had just retired from the Army. I wanted to establish a primary care provider. And then I just had some bumps and bruises and general things I wanted taken care of from when I was on active duty. Finally, 2011, I got really ill. And I knew something wasn't right. And so I started knocking down the doors of the Phoenix VA. And when I finally got in, I realized that the system wasn't right. My dad was a doctor, as I mentioned. I grew up in hospitals. I saw what good medicine looked like in Southern California. And here I saw holes in the walls. I saw students doing x-rays. I saw dirty stethoscopes. I saw blood and semen all over the place. Urine was commonplace at the Phoenix VA, even fecal matter, which is just unbelievable. And so, so initially I knew something was wrong with the system. And I knew something was wrong with the care before I even got into the system. Finally, I was able to see a nurse practitioner at the end of 2011, and she diagnosed my prostate that was large and asymmetrical. And so, I was only 41, and I had not really been around a lot of guys that had prostate issues. And so I had asked her, what do I do about a large prostate? And she said, well, it's large and asymmetrical, but there's nothing you need to worry about. And so, she had presented herself as a medical doctor, so I assumed that was sufficient. And so I assumed large and asymmetrical, kind of like my nose, it's large and asymmetrical, and it is what it is.
So you didn't read anything?
Didn't read anything into it whatsoever. Little did I know that a large asymmetrical prostate could be an indication of something very severe, like prostate cancer. Another year went by. I finally saw a real medical doctor at the Phoenix VA. And the first thing he asked me was, where's your PSA, which is the prostate-specific androgen test? And I said, PSA? I thought of public service announcement. That's the only thing I could think of. Right. And I said, I haven't had a PSA test. He said, well, I know you did because you have a large prostate, and it's enlarged and it's abnormal. You just didn't know you had it, so let me look it up. And he spent about 5 minutes going through the computer, and I heard a lot of hemming and hawing, looking for my records, and he couldn't find any PSA. And he was shocked. He said, well, I need to order your PSA. Let me check your prostate. And he said, wow, your prostate's very enlarged. It's very hard. It's very abnormal. I'm going to order a PSA immediately. And when he ordered the PSA, called me the next day, and he said, your PSA is 50. And he said, this can't be possible. You're 41 years of age, 42. You're healthy. You're active. Normal PSA ranges are 0 to 2, maybe 0 to 3. If it's elevated, it's 4 to 10 range, and if it's 10, that's an alarming number. To have a PSA of 50 has to be a misreading. So let's retest your PSA next week. So I went back in, redid my PSA, and it was 52. So here we had a baseline of 50, now 52. My PSA was quickly rising. A PSA of 50 probably indicates a stage 4 aggressive prostate cancer. So he said, I need to send you over to urology. At that time, he tried to send me into urology, but the urologist didn't want to see me. And so it's even in my notes, that he would send me to urology. The urologist wouldn't call back. I couldn't get in there. So finally he said to the urologist, you've got to see this young veteran. He's got a high, extremely elevated PSA. He needs a biopsy. So he got me in for the biopsy about 2 or 3 weeks later. And sure enough, it came back that I had stage 4 prostate cancer.
It's just remarkable because I remember you and I were working on a separate business deal at the time, and the characteristics and the symptoms that you had at that time, a lot of pain in your bones. I mean, all of these things are markers for any doctor who's astute in this field to know that there's a significant problem, and none of that was diagnosed properly. So real quickly, while we wrap up this portion of you finally finding that out, so now you're overwhelmed, right? And so you seek, they basically offered no real treatment plan, right? Chemical neutering, I mean, that's not a plan, you know? So we sought out a doctor through our contacts to get you in front of Dr. Bigelow, and then what happens when we go there?
Yeah, so you raised a great point. I was offered no treatment options at the Phoenix VA. Other than just chemical castration, that was it. And so I was sent home to die, given 6 to 12 months to live. The irony was that the scans they wanted to do were going to take 3 to 4 months to be done, and then 2 months for a follow-up appointment after that. So I started doing the math. So you mean I'm going to do my scans in 3 to 4 months, and then I'm going to come back and see you 2 months later, that's 6 months, and you gave me 6 to 12 months to die. So that means I'm going to be dead by the time I come back to see you. So to your point, I asked you and many others, you know, what is a good urologist to see here in the Phoenix area? And so we had set up a consult the same afternoon with Dr. Bigelow. I was very suicidal that day. You know, I had just been given a devastated diagnosis of a stage 4 disease, non-curable. Doctor was convinced spread throughout my entire body with no treatment options whatsoever. At that point, why not just end your life is how I looked at it. And so thankfully, because of you and our community, we were able to get myself in with Dr. Bigelow that afternoon. And Dr. Bigelow looked at my pathology report and he said, "This is serious."
I remember him saying that. This is a problem, but he goes, I can handle it.
But he said, there's things we can do. He said, look, if we do nothing, you will die. That's unequivocal. The VA is right. If there's no treatment options, then you die, period. There's no guarantee, but if we fight, there is a chance that we can extend your life. And that's what I wanted to hear, right? I was a fighter. You know, I was an alpha male, as a CEO, as a police officer, I was a soldier, I was in law enforcement. And, you know, my MO is to fight in a battle, not to give up. And so all I wanted was a doctor that would say, hey, I can't cure you, or I can't promise you a rose garden, but I'm on your side and I'll fight with you. And that's what he did. And so, you know, I searched high and low. I went to several different doctors across the country. I reached out to doctors internationally. And ironically, all roads led back to Dr. Bigelow here in Chandler.
So obviously he's doing well now. The story continues. So we're going to pick the story back up on this edition of UroChat. So we invite you to stay with us because you won't want to miss the rest of this story. And what he did in the middle of his cancer treatment is really remarkable.